much for joining us for our fireside chat with the CTO of Wordsmith. So we're really thrilled to welcome Gigz, who is our Chief Technology Officer and a trailblazer in legal engineering. He has over 15 years of experience at tech giants like Instagram, Facebook, and Microsoft. He's shaped cutting-edge technologies from enhancing Instagram's Explore feature to developing Facebook's AR engine. Now at Wordsmith, he's focused on building innovative AI tools designed to tackle the unique challenges that in-house legal teams face. So beyond these impressive contributions and the great product that he is building, he also shares his insights in the Legal Engineer Substack blog. If you have not checked that out, please check the course materials, and there's a link to that. He offers very practical advice at the intersection of technology and prompting and law. So thank you so much for joining us for this fireside chat. I'm going to jump right into it with the first question. So let's start with your blog, The Legal Engineer. It really has a unique perspective. So how do you define legal engineering, and why do you think that legal engineering is essential for the legal industry?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, it's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me to this chat. Yeah, so in terms of legal engineer, I actually think, in my mind, legal engineer is anyone who is working on the intersection of legal and technology. And, it can be anywhere on the spectrum from, people like me, right? So who come with tech background from software engineering and working in the legal space to build tools for lawyers, all the way to lawyers that are actually curious in technology and start using AI to automate their tasks. Legal ops, right? So that's the role which I think probably, it's right in the middle, right? So they are with legal background and they are really focused on improving workflows for lawyers, right? So, I think legal ops is probably one of the best examples. But yeah, in my mind, it can be anywhere on the spectrum from lawyer to software engineer.
So I like that, actually, a spectrum. So a legal engineering spectrum where we have you on one side, right, who is clearly in the engineering world. Then I like that, yeah, this legal ops, right, that really sort of sits in the middle. And then we move maybe more someone like me, who's a lawyer, who's curious, who dabbles, right? I've used ChatGPT to help me write code, but I don't really know what I'm doing. So I really like that. It's a nice visual.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think the thing that we all share, right, as legal engineers, is the goal of making legal work more productive, more fun, more interesting, more focused on the challenging aspects of it rather than on mundane things that actually AI can really help with.
That's true. Yes, that's what ties us all together. So now, in this course, right, we've talked a lot about other AI tools, the basics of AI, the basics of prompting that go across multiple different tools. We also, I also explained that there are broad purpose tools and then there are legal specific tools like Wordsmith. So at a very high level, can you explain how Wordsmith handles legal tasks differently than the broad purpose tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Copilot?
Yeah, absolutely. So it all boils down to specific legal knowledge and specific tooling that is available to AI in legal tools like Wordsmith comparing to ChatGPT. And I can maybe even go with kind of simple example. For example, if you are asking general purpose AI to read your file, well, some of them, like Claude, for example, it will be able to see red lines, but ChatGPT, for example, it will not be able to see red lines. And the main reason is because ChatGPT is so broad, right? So that's usually not a priority for most of the people to have red lines in their documents, right? But for lawyers, that's absolutely paramount, right? And of course, it's expectation from any legal tool that it will be able to extract red lines and comments from the documents. And it goes all the way, right? So for example, again, you can ask ChatGPT to try to review a contract, and it will come up with some good points, right? But it will be like nowhere comprehensive. And actually some points can be just purely wrong because you can get confused from which side the contract is being reviewed. So we have absolutely seen that. And the legal tools, they usually would have workflows for review that are refined and built by lawyers, and like they are much more narrowly applicable, right? So for example, there will be a workflow for reviewing NDA for receiving side, there will be workflow for reviewing from disclosing side. And yeah, and like legal products, they will encompass like all this specific knowledge and specific tools that are built just for lawyers and that ChatGPT wouldn't have because like that's like just too narrow of a use case for them. They are aiming for broader population, and yeah, usually like broader population don't require like all these specifics.
And so when you say that there's workflows, let's just take the NDA example because that's always easy. Um, that we have a workflow for receiving and then also workflow for the one that's giving the information. Is that something that's going on in the background that's been built, or like how is that different?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, like again, like different legal AI products can approach it differently. Like I can share like how we approach it in Wordsmith. So in Wordsmith, we would have a set of specific checks, right? So for example, like some will be like generally applicable, like for example, like definition of confidential information must be present and must be clear, right? But some will be applicable to one party or another, for example, term, right? Because like one party will try to negotiate longer term for NDA, another party will try to negotiate shorter term, right? The same with liability, etc. And then, like these checks, they will be specific to the party that you are reviewing for, right? And they will trigger like when AI knows which party you are, right? Like either it can infer that from, like the presence of your company in this NDA, like as a specific side, or if you tell it explicitly, review for this side or for that side. But yeah, will apply one set of checks or another, right? So it will apply the general applicable ones, but it will also apply like specific ones that are applicable to the party you're reviewing for.
Okay, so that's interesting. So it's not even so we're doing multiple checks in the background, but they're also smart enough, and we have both sides covered, right? And this is, I also try to explain like why legal work is so complicated. We just think, oh, review a contract, that's easy, but we're not thinking about all the things that are actually going on in our head, right? It's very clear to us what party we represent, but if you're just dropping that in ChatGPT, it doesn't have the context.
Yeah, absolutely. And like this context is the key, and that's again like that's another challenge for building AI products, right? That like all the contract reviews, right, and like a lot of decisions questions, they are usually like there is no general answer to that, right? The answer will be like very context specific. It's specific to jurisdiction. It's specific to your company policies, to your company risk tolerance, right? So it's a lot of this specificity, and like there should be a way to capture all this nuance, right? And like that's what legal products do. They allow you to capture that. They allow you to tune your workflows towards like all this nuance that is like uniquely specific to yourself or to your company, etc.
That definitely makes sense, and that's why it's a lot easier for lawyers to use the legal specific tools. And that sort of leads into another question, is that you've implemented this multi-check system that we've just described. Can you share a key lesson from building this system that maybe others could learn from?
Yeah, so there are several interesting ones. I think, like one is that the more fine breakdown you have, right? So the more specific you are with the questions, the better AI performance you will usually see, right? Because you exclude this, like you exclude different elements where AI can make mistakes or incorrect assumptions, right? So the finer breakdown you have, usually the more accurate results will be. Another lesson, which I think like is very important and in general like extremely applicable to all kind of AI work, is iterative approach, right? So first time you try something, it's very likely that you won't get results you want. And that's, like that's not the sign to give up, right? So it's not the sign to say, oh, like AI cannot do the job, right? Usually it requires like a couple of different approaches, using different wording, like getting to a little bit more finer breakdown, trying to figure out, like what exactly is confusing AI, right? And like breaking it down, restructuring, and trying again can lead to good results. Like one of my favorite examples, I have it on my blog if you're curious to read, about getting AI to correctly identify whether NDA is mutual and one-sided. Like, apparently much harder question for AI. And, like, it's not that AI cannot answer it, right? It just, again, like, you need to like help it to look at the right things to be able to answer this question correctly. So a lot of things are possible, but many of them require a lot of iteration, a lot of testing, and not giving up when you don't get the best results right away.
I definitely think that's great advice in general. And since we're sort of on, giving advice, what advice would you give legal teams about designing more or designing prompts for more complex tasks? Is it just the same advice that we talked about, or is there anything else that they should be thinking about if they're doing complex tasks?
Yeah, there are, like there are definitely a few things. So, like what I said is like, of course, applicable, right? So, like iteration, clarifying, breaking things down, etc. One really important thing that, again, like for example, like if you're using some of the legal tech, like you will get for free because like a prompt will be engineered for you. But if you're doing prompts on your own in ChatGPT, ask AI to provide reasoning, right? And tweak that as well. Like that's probably like one of the single most powerful things is to get AI first to reflect on the answer and like pull information. So for example, you can say something like extract relevant quotes from the documents and then give detailed reasoning on why like sort of on why this engage is mutual, right? And by asking AI to do that, you actually increase quality of the answer dramatically because it will spend more time kind of thinking and going through the relevant pieces of information, regurgitating them, and at the end, arriving to the right answer.
So that's a good way to improve it because it's sort of checking or verifying itself.
Yeah, it's it's kind of there are multiple explanations why it works, but you can think about it. AI will try to make sure that the answer is consistent, like kind of internally consistent, right? So if you're asking it to say yes or no, right, like yes or no is like kind of always consistent, right? And again, it will more likely get it right, but like there is definitely much more leave room for mistake. But if you ask AI to like produce this reasoning, right, and like source codes, etc., then the final answer, like if it's inconsistent with all the like evidence and all the data that it pulled, right, like AI will see that, right, and that's why like that's why you're increasing likelihood of the correct answer.
Interesting. And so, because we're discussing this, like how do you ensure that AI tools are not only accurate for the legal profession, but also adaptable for these nuanced requirements? Like we're discussing how nuanced the legal profession is. So how do you, balance that accuracy with the very special needs of the legal profession?
Yeah. Yeah. So usually, again, like it all boils down to, like getting to the right level of details, right? So again, like usually, like one prompt for a complicated task won't be enough, right? So making sure that like all the tasks are broken down. Making sure that it's easy to configure the product, right? So for example, there is a space to provide company details, there is a space to provide jurisdiction, etc., right? So like provide all this required context that AI needs to answer questions correctly. But it also goes all the way to, to like building specific workflows for specific companies, right? So again, like in Wordsmith, we do that quite often. like just like coming up with bespoke workflows for like very specific company needs, because like general purpose ones, like in some cases there will be enough, right? And again, for some documents, like it's good to have like general ADA review workflow or like vendor agreement workflow. But then like if the company has like very specific needs, and like they can work with us to produce much more specific and detailed workflow. And again, we'll be testing that together and making sure that like all the specific requirements are covered. And back to what I mentioned, right? Like iteration and testing, like that's what actually makes it good. So that's a lot of work, but it definitely like payoff, definitely worth it.
I think that's actually a good, again, if we look at like a spectrum of use cases, right? We have general tools and the product is customized for legal. So you're starting off in a better spot than ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity. And then we have these tools like First Pass or Workspaces that again are customized for lawyers. And let's say if we're using First Pass and you use the NDA review tool, you can customize it yourself with customizing buttons, building on top of sort of this foundation, or we can also work with you to do that. So you really, you could go to ChatGPT all the way to, white glove service, building on top of a legal specific tool and then customizing that. So it's
Yeah,
extremely nuanced for your
yeah.
company and all your company's positions.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And like for different tasks, there will be like different level of customization that you require, right? So like if you want to like draft quick summary or email, right, you probably need like zero customization. But for something more complex and that requires a lot of precision, you can like go all the way to like kind of working with us to build these very fine-tuned and detailed workflows. And like it makes sense for certain things. It doesn't make sense for some others.
Yeah, I'm hoping no one's customizing an NDA workflow. Hopefully they're
Yeah,
customizing
yeah,
their own like MSA or something, right? Their own
yeah.
thing. Yeah, let's try to avoid super customizing NDAs. That would be silly. Now, like looking to the future a little bit, because we're trying to figure out where AI is going. And just before this, you and I were talking about, how quickly this happens. Like just last night, there were announcements from both OpenAI and Claude about new features. So do you see a future where AI can self-correct or adapt its reasoning process to avoid hallucinations? Or are we always going to need to have a human verifying the output at some point?
Yeah, that's like that's a great question, right? And like I guess like answering about the end state is a little bit harder, but like I think you can clearly see the trend, right? So AI is definitely getting more and more, and like kind of significantly more capabilities on self-reflection and giving better answers, right? So like when most of the people experienced AI for the first time, which was GPT-3 model, right? Like, that one was hallucinating a lot. And now if you compare it to, like kind of the absolute state of the art, like O3 model from OpenAI, right? That is capable of like solving PhD level complexity mathematical problems with great accuracy, right? So something that, like vast majority of humans cannot actually do, right? So, like it's really long, like long journey. And it's very clear that, AI is like absolutely getting better and better in that and in massive leaps. And it's also clear, like there are multiple different techniques that were discovered on the way, right? So for example, like, like one of the simple techniques like this, like asking AI to explain the reasoning, right? Or like breaking things down in steps, right? Like which is known as chain of thought. Then, like the next step was to get that chain of thought automated. Like that's like O1 class and O3 class of OpenAI models, right? And then, like now, again, like seems like the next breakthrough is like what's called inference time scaling, right? So allow AI to take multiple paths of thinking, right? And like take multiple different approaches and then look at the results and compare, right? And like, it's almost like, you hire 1,000 people to think about the same problem, they will think about it in a slightly different way, right? And results are brought together, and then we try to figure out what's actually the right approach, what's the right outcome. So yeah, so that's improving very quickly. The question is, when and if it will reach human level capability to judge. Again, I don't think we know. My bet would be that it would reach that capability. In how many years? I would, give it, 2 to 5 probably. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's coming, and it definitely will be getting better.
But it was really interesting actually back in 2000, I think 17, 18, I was talking to engineers about general AI, right, reaching human reasoning. And at that point, people were like, it could be 10 years or it could be 50, right? And so this window keeps
Yeah,
getting
it definitely
shorter.
narrows down. Yeah, it definitely narrows down. So in general, these generative models, right? Like that was a massive step forward. And especially I think, it's like AI has been doing amazing things before, right? And we all experience that, Google search result, right? Like that's a great example, right? It's amazing thing that AI is doing, right? Or the space that I have been working on in recommendations, right? Like recommending people interesting content. Again, it was doing great job, the works that humans actually cannot do, right? Like AI is much better, for example, at recommendations than human can be. But it was, very specific tasks, right? So that's why there was never a feeling that actually AI is, getting anywhere close to general human intelligence, right? And to what humans can do. And I think, this appearance of ChatGPT, that was just a revelation, right? It shows, oh, okay, actually state of the art is, so much closer, right? It's a big difference between, just kind of understanding that AI is great at recommendations, but, cannot do anything else, to the point where, oh, actually, it can produce answers that, are human level quality. And yeah, there are some gaps, but they don't feel so big anymore.
That's definitely true. So now the next question is, I actually think last night, I haven't fully read it, but OpenAI released agents, right, to order you food, to book you an Uber, to book you a plane flight. We'll leave aside the legal issues of that at the moment. But do you think we'll see, do you think companies will have their own agents who will then be negotiating contracts with one another? And how I envision that, right, is you have your standard contracts and then you have your fallback positions, and the agents will go and compare those, and then they'll surface, hey, these are the points where we can agree, where then a human needs to come in and make some human decision. Do you think we're close to that? Or do you even see that happening? Is that
Yeah.
realistic?
Yeah, no, you frame it, really well, right? The problem, and even just from this framing, it's pretty clear that it should be possible even now, right? It's a matter of building and wiring it up together, right? Because yes, if you have a good playbook defined, right, and that might be, again, one of the more challenging parts of this job, right? To make sure that there is an easy way to codify all your positions, etc. As soon as it's defined, you can even see at the current state of AI, it will be able to do negotiations on large number of these positions, right? Where where it's pretty clear, right? So it matches playbooks on both sides, right? And a lot of things can be resolved right away. And yeah, for the points where it's impossible to satisfy playbooks of both sides, right? Then you call for a human, and yeah, it becomes kind of different level of negotiation when you're actually budging on, on some of the positions, right? And changing them perhaps. So yeah, so that's, I definitely see it coming. Again, I don't see human being excluded from this loop anytime soon, right? Because again, everything will need to be validated, and often the decisions will need to be made that based on the like non-codified information, right? Like making some exceptions, right, or like escalating, etc. So I can totally see the presence of humans in this process for pretty long time. But it's also absolutely clear that like such tools will be built. Moreover, so I know that like some of our customers, for example, they like there is no like fully automated agentic negotiation, but they build some interesting solutions on top of Wordsmith to help humans negotiate, right? So, for example, they have an environment where they can state, like what the other party wants, and then the AI will compare that to their playbook, right? And will try to suggest like kind of how to respond to that, right? Like what can be acceptable, or if it's not acceptable, how the best to frame the like the position, like how to adjust it. And I know that they are using it pretty successfully. So like it's definitely pretty close.
Yeah, that's definitely exciting. Well, I'm glad that that's not far off because we want to get that sort of mundane work that we don't need to use our brains on and save it for really the big, more interesting, specialized, value adding work. So that's
Yeah.
definitely exciting. And so now we've talked about all different things that sort of in the legal industry, but what do you think is one of the biggest challenges of building AI for our industry that maybe it's unique to the legal industry, maybe it's not. But what do you see as the biggest challenge for building in this space, building AI products for lawyers?
Yeah. So I think, like, yeah, that's a great question. So, and, like, there is also very interesting parallel to software engineering here. So legal work, it requires a lot of precision, right? So, like, again, like if you're writing a poem, right, then, you actually, you have to be imprecise, right? And it's actually great when you have variation in your text. While when you are drafting a contract, right, it needs to be precise, like the wording needs to be accurate, there must be no misses, etc. Which, like to my parallel to the code, like that's the same with the code, right? When you are writing a computer program, right, it needs to be precise, it needs to do exactly what you meant it to do. And for AI, that's generally pretty challenging, right? We know like about hallucinations, right? It's like prone to making mistakes. And here is where the difference come into play. So in software engineering, it's much easier to validate, right? So like if AI wrote you a computer program, you can, like run what's called compiler, right? Like that's like kind of form verification of this program. And then you can run tests and you can see whether it's working or not. But in legal space, it's much more complicated, right? Because, like there is no compiler for legal documents and, like checking it is also pretty complicated. So, like that's probably also the way to go, right? So, like if you drafted contract, you can get AI to check it with different scenarios, right? So, like let's say, like if this scenario happens, like what will be the outcome based on the contract? If another scenario happens, what will be the outcome, right? And like that's actually like probably like the right path to solve it. But yeah, but like that's like getting answers that are very precise is hard, and it's double hard in the legal space because there is like no easy way to like validate this answer, or like validating requires actually like much higher level of intelligence.
I mean, that definitely makes sense, right? And two attorneys, even at the same company, may disagree on a position or on a wording choice, right? So that definitely makes sense. If only we had a compiler for, I guess you'd have to
Yeah.
have two, right? In any one situation, you'd have to have one for one side and one for the other side. Um,
Yeah. But yeah, that's maybe, like, yeah, like building this, like tests for the contract, right? Like stretching contract in, like different ways with scenarios. Yeah, like that's really viable path forward.
I do like the suggestion though, of, taking your contract and obviously you have to use legal AI to do this because it has the intelligence and structure, but saying, if, they breached earlier, if I breached earlier, what if delivery was not made on time, right? Like what were the consequences? So quickly checking and making sure, right, maybe how you drafted it or the changes that you've made then are reflected by an AI that's checking it. So that's also
Yeah,
an interesting use case.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like what AI is good at, right, is like kind of going broad and brainstorming, right? So you can actually use AI to build a set of tests, right? So like you don't necessarily need to come up with like all the possible scenarios, right? But you can use AI to like brainstorm it for you, and then review and add the scenarios that you didn't come up with.
That's another great use case. So I mean, these are really interesting problems, right? So what excites you most about the next generation of AI or where we're going with this technology?
Yeah. So, like in general, again, like there is a short term and there is a long term, right? So the short term, I think it's pretty clear that we are moving in the world of agents, right? And like when AI, so currently AI can, like you can ask it some question, right? Or, like kind of a simple workflow and it can produce the answer for you, right? But the next step is you give AI a problem and it figures out like how it can use like all the tools available to it and like how to plan the solution of the problem. And of course, like it's very clearly will be a big time saver, but it also something that is pretty hard to build, right? Because again, like on every step, AI can make mistakes, and these mistakes can accumulate. And like just getting to this vision of AI being able to like more independently act on solving specific problems is extremely exciting, extremely interesting, and like yeah, that's like that's what I love to do as an engineer. Um, in the long run, like of course, like question of AGI is interesting. I would say like it's exciting, but also like a little bit, like well, like scary in a way, right? Like how the world will look like when you are coexisting with effectively like another species, right? That are sharing, the same level of intelligence or even higher, like how that would work. Like, it's even hard to imagine that. So, it's like exciting future, but it probably will be very different from, like from how we know the world. So that's very
Yeah,
interesting.
it'll be interesting. I'm just thinking, like you and I both have children, what is their work life going to look like?
Yeah, that's something that I really think a lot about, but like unfortunately I don't have the answer, right? But it feels like even the current education system is like not suitable for like the current state of things, right? Because again, like education was focused a lot on providing people with basic set of knowledge, right? And like now you like almost don't need it, right? Like AI can do like all the basic things, and like you need to like kind of now like creativity is actually helpful, right? And like kind of thinking through the problem, breaking things down. But like in 5 years, it probably will also be different, right? So like what's needed is evolving much faster than like what's provided by education systems. So yeah, I think for our children, the world probably will look very different, and they will have to navigate that.
Yeah, well, that's definitely exciting. So I have one last question for you, and then we'll wrap things up. So, what is one interesting thing that you've learned about building a product for lawyers in the legal profession? And I am a lawyer, so I can give you freedom to express yourself here.
Yeah, that's like I think maybe the biggest revelation for me was actually like how similar are like engineering and legal work, right? And again, like I haven't been working with legal before starting Wordsmith, and to me, like the roles felt always, like pretty far apart. Like when I was experiencing and interacting with lawyers, like in the companies that I worked in. But in reality, like it's all about this, like very precise and detailed work, right? And like there are definitely a lot of similarities. And even, like it goes to the funniest thing. So for example, we have internal tool in Wordsmith that we use for like building all these review workflows, and engineers and lawyers love it. And no other roles actually will even get, like why this tool is useful, right? So, like that was like really, like kind of big unexpected thing, but like I also really appreciate it. It's, like it's fun to find like-minded people in a completely different domain.
I mean, I totally agree with you. So, I've been a product lawyer supporting engineering and development teams for, I guess, close to 10 years now. And I think part of the reason I love working with engineers and developers is because we are so similar and so logical. And I've even met some engineers and developers who, like, let's say, know open source licensing better than I do because they really just wanted to dive into it and understand it. And so yeah, I've always had enjoyed working with teams that because we think, like you said, we think, I think, in a similar way and have similar workflows. We have our own languages. It needs to be precise and logical. So I'm glad that you also feel that way and it wasn't just me like making it up or hallucinating it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like that's definitely the case, right? So, it's just a thing that usually lawyers and engineers are interacting, like in very different contexts, right? Like when, I don't know, an engineer is signing the contract, right, or something like that. But like as soon as you start working on the same problem, like you actually realize, yeah, like how similar the approaches are, and like requirements, etc. Yeah, so that's very interesting, but you see it only when you work on the shared problem together.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're extremely
Mhm.
busy building the product, but I really appreciated all these insights, and I'm sure all of the Wordsmith Academy students do as well.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. It was very exciting, and yeah, happy to be here again at some point of time, and happy to answer more questions.
Awesome. We will definitely do it again. Thanks so much.
Thank you.